From beautiful Southern California to Lebanon or wherever you are around the globe. Welcome to Unheard Stories. I am Lubna Hassania. Unheard Stories is a monthly event that is designed to bring our community together and shed light on the many journeys and legacies of success, creativity, and philanthropy. We have a panel of 7 guests today, and while each one of them has a unique story, they all have something in common. All 7 are the US-born children of Lebanese immigrants. But before we hear from them, I would like to start by welcoming former Ambassador of Lebanon to Kuwait, His Excellency Jean Macaron, former Consul General Mirna Khawli, Honorary Consul of Lebanon for the Greater Cleveland Area, Anthony Asher, Honorary Consul of Lebanon to Tahiti, Joseph Maroon. We also have with us today Honorable Judge Tony Raphael. I woke up this morning to find in my inbox several messages from people apologizing for not being able to be on this call with us simply because they have no electricity. Saad, Muhammad, Fadi, George, and all the rest. I feel your pain. To those who are with me today, I am very grateful. We are gathered here today to meet a group of eager, dauntless, and very prudent young men and women who set very high standards for themselves and diligently seek to realize their true potential. It is much easier in life to theorize and speculate about what one should or should not do, and much more difficult to discover what one can do and then go out and do it. When our ancestors, the Phoenicians, left the solid ground beneath their feet and threw themselves in the Mediterranean Sea, they left behind all that is comfortable and familiar and ventured into the unknown. It turned out to be the best thing they ever did. How else would we call them masters of the seas? The Phoenicians had no instruments to help them navigate. Yet they sailed beyond the Mediterranean into the Atlantic, the Red Sea, and the Indian Ocean, expanding their perspective as they explored the world. Venturing into the unknown is like walking into darkness. Lack of predictability tends to be very scary. That's why at the heart of most immigration stories, there is angst and there is worry. But from the heart of most immigrants emanate determination and courage. America was built by brave immigrants who flocked in successive waves and who would go to any lengths in search for a better life and better opportunities. The grit and the determination to make it in a foreign land are what drive us immigrants to focus on growth and success. We bring with us a new form of energy, new ideas, new flavors of life. We immerse ourselves in the new culture and become an integral part of the new society. We, the immigrants, make up significant part of the US workforce across a wide range of industries, and on several key measures, we do outperform native-born Americans. The Lebanese diaspora is among the most successful in the United States. This year, we added a Nobel Prize laureate in Physiology or Medicine to the list, Dr. Ardem Patapoutian. We have Dr. Charles Lashi of JPL, Dr. Nsuli of IMF, Paul Orfilia of Kinko's, Tony Fadl of the iPod and Nest Labs. We have the Dow brothers, and who doesn't know Danny Thomas, Casey Kasem, Paul Anka, Tony Shalhoub, and Ralph Nader, and that's only to name a few. According to a report published in the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, US-born children of immigrants are among the strongest fiscal and economic contributors in the US, and that's a direct quote. Sitting on the panel with me today are 7 exceptional US-born children of Lebanese immigrants. You will hear about their amazing academic and career journeys, so you get a glimpse of the unique identity of this bicultural generation. I would like to welcome Laura, Lucy, Gina, Omar, Ramsey, Serene, and Grace. We are celebrating all 7 of you today. You are all here because you and your parents recognize the importance of hard work, respect the laws of the land, acknowledge the power of education, and value the opportunity available for you. So let's do it. Let's start by having you take turns to introduce yourselves to our audience. We'll start with you, Laura. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Elltel. I'm from Los Angeles, and I went to school at the University of San Francisco, where I studied international relations and theater. You can usually probably find me in the boxing gym, in a movie theater with my mac and cheese, or just on a plane to a random country. I think film and travel go hand in hand as they transport you to a different place mentally and physically. And they help you grow and see perspectives in order to better yourselves. So I can't wait to share my story and speak with you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Omar Motar. I went to UC San Diego for my undergraduate in biochemistry, and shortly after that, wanted to go into medical school. Applied for the MD PhD program at Boston University. Spent time there 10 years learning a lot about both how to incorporate medicine and research, and intertwining a lot of like my spirituality into my practice helped me gain a form of empathy to understand the patient. And so a lot of work I'm doing now is to generate new products or solutions to help patients, and I'm very excited to share that later on. But thank you so much for having me.
My name is Gina Amar, and it's so great to see all of you here. My parents both immigrated here from Lebanon, so I am a mix of Lebanese and a little bit Syrian, but mostly Lebanese. I'm currently in my 3rd and final year of law school at UC Hastings in San Francisco, and will be sitting for the California bar exam in July. Afterwards, I will move back to LA, where I'm originally from, and start full-time at a law firm. I'm so excited to move back to LA. It's where I'm from. It's where my family is. And in my sparing free time at this point, I try to read as much as I can for fun. Law school does not allow you to like reading after a while, so I try to keep that intact and try to go to the beach or run outside as much as possible. And I'm definitely hoping to try and travel more soon, especially going back to Lebanon. Of course, we used to go all the time when we were younger. Our families are still there. So hopefully, inshallah, things get better there one day and we can go and have a great time like we used to.
My name is Lucy Elltel, and I'm from Los Angeles. I studied biology and psychology at the University of California, Berkeley, and then I will be starting med school in the fall of 2022. I enjoy baking, reading, and hot yoga in my spare time. I also really love learning new languages, which goes hand in hand with my other passion of traveling.
My name is Roslin. I'm 22 years old. I studied at the University of UC Santa Barbara for my undergraduate degree in economics. And I'm currently at George Washington University studying public policy with a specialization in environmental policy for my master's program. In my spare time, I love sports. I'm a sports junkie, so you'll catch me, playing football, soccer, basketball, watching it all. And then I love going outdoors, obviously, looking at nature and everything. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Roslin. I'm 22 from Los Angeles. For my undergraduate degree, I studied environmental science and biology at Cornell University, and now I'm studying environmental health at Columbia University in New York City. When I'm back home in Los Angeles, my favorite thing to do is go to the beach, and I love farmers markets, so you can probably find me there. And now that I'm on break from school, I'm trying to learn how to cook, and my mom and aunties are trying to teach me. So that's what I've been up to.
Hi everyone, my name is Grace Hassania, and I'm a 19-year-old from Oak Park, California. I am currently at the University of Southern California, living in LA, studying political science. I currently spend most of my time working as a Senate aide in the USC student government and dancing in the dance school. I love to go to the beach, listen to music, and dance, and I'm very excited to speak with you all today.
Well, thank you, Grace. Thank you all for your beautiful introductions. Today you are the vision, tomorrow you are the reality. So dream big, please, and keep pressing forward. I know Laura is determined to make the American dream her own. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
What is that dream you're living today, Laura? And how determined are you to bring it to reality?
Well, the American dream, I think, is defined by how successful you are. And to me, success is very individualistic and very personal. So in our culture, it is a little unforgiving to choose the arts as a career path as opposed to law, medicine, or engineering. And for the longest time, I would just instinctively say to people that I would be a lawyer, even though I hated arguing and I hated all of that. Yeah. But in high school, I developed a type of stutter and an anxiety disorder, which made it nearly impossible for me to speak in class or in public without having a panic attack or crying. And then I sadistically joined the speech and debate team thinking it would look good on college applications. And I thought, this would be a very good thing to have me stand out with. But it was just, I think, the worst thing I could have done to myself. Even my coaches asked me why I had joined the team and, if I could not join it the next year possibly. But during that time, I ironically found a love for writing and for acting, despite the whole stuttering and panic attack thing. And I wanted to express myself so desperately that I decided to switch from debate to speech. And I still dealt with panic attacks and still struggled tremendously. But I worked with my situation as opposed to against it. Mm-hmm. And after that, I went undefeated for nearly 2 years in speech and debate, or in speech. And by senior year, I became speech captain, and it opened up a whole new world of possibilities for me. Now, that's not to say choosing this path, doesn't come with its own challenges. I did study international relations in college, and I did do theater as well on the side. So having those, I think, have been very beneficial to me as a person to help grow. But to me, I'm chasing my dream, at least, and I'm creating my reality through my everyday experiences. So for me, that is my definition of success.
That's a great definition, Laura. You know what Walt Disney said, right? He said, if you can dream it, you can do it.
Oh, yes.
you are famous today.
Ooh.
You're very visible on social media with thousands of followers on TikTok. You post videos about funny immigrant stories, stories you derive from your immediate environment about immigrants' early encounters with the American culture and the English language. What is the message behind the stories? What objective are you trying to achieve with that?
Well, my mantra as an actress is I live by don't judge a person until you walk in their shoes. And the same thing goes for creating a character. You don't really know and understand it until you kind of, put your mindset into it and create what you want for your performance. So I think in today's climate and nearly all of my upbringing, honestly, most people have had such a close-minded idea of the people that make up this country. And I've always been told that my stories are very comical and that, my delivery's very good. So I thought, why not share it with a larger platform and educate some people on the innocence and the beauty that it is to be an immigrant and to grow up with immigrants in this land. I didn't really start the platform to think that people would see it. Social media is so fickle and so difficult to navigate. So I didn't really think that the videos would blow up. I thought maybe 50 people would see it, 100 at most, but somehow they've done very well and people love hearing the stories. They took to it quite immediately, and everyone has opened their minds, and the comments have always been so kind and so sweet, saying that they've never thought of these, different scenarios or these different little mindsets, so that's kind of what I really love about it. And talking about being a first gen kid, or even talking about my mom's struggles when she first came to the country. It's opened up a lot of people's minds. And people are very appreciating and understanding about it. And they do it very respectfully, thankfully. And humor is very deflective and it's very non-threatening. So telling the stories in these types of ways, I think, is a better way for people to listen and to hear the messages.
True, true. And you're definitely, like you said, increasing awareness about that part of the world, clearing hopefully some misconceptions and stereotypes, and most importantly, revealing, like you said, the beauty of and the vulnerability actually of the people. Can you share a story with us, Laura? I know you have many.
Oh goodness, let me just pull it out from my portfolio. I was actually just thinking about this the other night, how we were talking about how we wanted to go to Lebanon soon, and how our summers being here in America, when we wouldn't go to Lebanon, were just so boring because we didn't know what to do as kids. We'd always, go back home or to Lebanon and be with our family and hang out with the cousins and things like that. And I remember when I was a kid, like maybe second or third grade, we had gone to Lebanon every single year since I'd been born at that point, I believe. So I don't remember much of having summers here in America. And I remember one year we'd come back after spending two and a half months being there. And I went up to one of my classmates and I was like, "Oh, how was Poland for you?" Or wherever her family's originally from. And she just looked at me and she was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Didn't you go see your grandma this summer?" And she looked at me and she goes, "My grandma lives 5 minutes away from here." And it dawned on me that like people are natives here, but they also don't have like a root to go back to because all of their family have been here for so long. And it like opened my eyes that we were fortunate enough to go back to a different place and to experience things a little bit differently. And I think that's been very nice in creating our personalities and our mindsets, I believe. Just like seeing how life is over there versus how life is over here and being able to morph the two.
Yeah, true. And in your day-to-day life, you try always to reconcile these two seemingly conflicting cultures. Is it difficult for you in a day-to-day manner?
I think at 28, I don't really have a full sense of belonging still in either culture, if that makes sense. Like I'm not American enough for the people here, and when I go back to Lebanon, I'm not Lebanese enough. There's no pleasing the two. It's always kind of, you're just stuck in a limbo. And I think as a child, more so, I struggled with it just because we grew up in a household that was very Lebanese and very, filled with culture and tradition, and then trying to adapt by understanding what my friends lived through as like a third party was very, I don't want to say confusing, but it was very conflicting. You're like, okay, well, they do that here, but at home and here, we do that here, but that's not frowned upon there, but it's looked down upon here. So it's finding a balance, I think. Yes. I mean, you can't change who you are and you can't erase your culture or your traditions. They're what make you the individual that you are. So I think as I've gotten older, I've understood the unique disposition of that.
I'm sure you did.
But definitely elementary school, especially since I didn't speak English very well. It wasn't my first language. I had the unibrow and the curly hair, and I brought kibbeh and tabbouleh for lunch instead of PB&J sandwiches. So it was mostly like the mockery of my classmates that made me ashamed of being who I was because they didn't understand and I didn't understand why they didn't understand. Mm-hmm. So now I pick my battles, obviously, and I've created a balance that I'm very comfortable with.
I'm happy for you that way. Yeah, thank you, Laura. Trying to contend with what each culture has to offer you is tricky, especially like you said, at a younger age. But as you mature, you start recognizing and discovering who you really are, your own identity, and that's totally yours. What you like, what you fear, what your aspirations are. Aspects you create for yourself. And no matter the culture you're born into, the search for your own identity, is a universal and an ongoing quest. And what is impressive in your story, though, in your case, Laura, is that you found a way to communicate it with others. And that's great. Thank you. Keep up the good work, Laura. Thank you for being with us. We're going to switch to Omar. Hello, Omar.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, doing well. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. I'm going to start by asking you, Dr. Omar, what is the one value your parents instilled in you that you stand by the most?
That's a great question. I'll do you one better. I'll do two because they each gave me a very specific value that's unique to who they are as people.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful and proud of my parents. They both displayed extraordinary characters throughout their life. Mm-hmm. My father, coming from Lebanon with only a small loan from his father, to come and set up his entire life and to go and sacrifice everything he had in Lebanon to go make it in America, to pursue the American dream. Because back in the 70s, that was like the ultimate way of proving yourself as an individual with your merits. Mm-hmm. And he did it, and he pushed himself very hard. He went through some struggles. I'm very certain there were very tough struggles, but what he allowed with his perseverance and determination was to create a platform for his children, like myself included, to be able to stand a little bit taller than he did when he came to the States. And with that, we get the freedom of really how we want to express ourselves. What do we want to devote our time to? There's not a war happening outside our backyard. We're able to actually be more peaceful and think more straightforward of what we want to achieve in our life. So with that determination, it's more like, well, what are you going to do with that determination? Like, what's the vision? And that's where I get it from my mother. My mother taught me a lot through her own ingenuity and her own wisdom. There is always another way to solve a problem. If you think there's only one way to solve a problem, you haven't thought hard enough. And that's what she taught me throughout our entire childhood. Those two values really like fuse into me as to what I do, because I don't really give up. Doing 10 years of a graduate school program is not something I think people would want to do. I think it's what you do to get through, to achieve and do something greater towards the end. So my parents keep me persistent in pushing myself and always finding a solution to problems that a lot of people have given up solving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So these values do help you stay focused on what's important in life, and they do help you stay anchored too. 2021 has ushered you, Omar, into something new. You graduated this year from Boston University with a degree in MD PhD, and congratulations on that. What inspired you to go through such a rigorous program? And can you briefly describe that program for us?
Sure. So to start, the MD PhD program is a dual degree program that typically medical schools would offer. And it allows you to apply for both programs. And if you get in, you're funded by the school. And the intention is that they're investing a lot of money for you to create either some type of new research that you can then pursue into transforming healthcare. Mm-hmm. And so what you do with that is really up to you. But traditionally, people would just do the program and then practice medicine as like a resident, go into their fellowship and be a full-time physician and do research on the side. So that's like the traditional safe route that a lot of people did. Throughout those 10 years, you learn a lot about not just the field of medicine and not just the field of research, but it's the synthesis. And you see so much of the gaps of how, well, they figured this out in the lab. Why are we not doing it with the patients? It's like, oh, because there's all this testing. It's like, okay, but who's coordinating this testing? Who figures out how to make this happen? It's the people who build talents in different fields and then find ways to overlap them. Mm-hmm. This is what the program was the strongest feature that I feel I didn't even know going into it. I feel like you gain that through the process of understanding that there's two very different worlds, even though they're both trying to solve very similar problems. And until you can understand that, you can appreciate both sides, have a better form of communication with the two, and actually start working on solutions to improve healthcare and patient health around the system throughout globally, even depending on what type of problem you want to take on.
That's so true. I mean, you get to understand the chemistry behind the biology and the physiology, and that's great. What was your research focus on, and why did you choose that project in particular, Omar?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. A lot of research typically would be done in like cancer, heart disease. There's very big fields of medicine that take the cake in terms of what people want to devote themselves to. Microbiology is huge now. Immunotherapy is really huge now. But I wanted to do something that I saw with my eyes, mm-hmm. that everyone around me is suffering from a problem with, and that would be like diabetes. In our own culture, diabetes is rampant. We have that, and it's it's no mistake. I mean, other cultures who have diets that revolve around heavily with their culture, they also seem to struggle with obesity and diabetes. So rather than seeing a problem as like the wave has crashed, now we have to deal with the damages, I saw this as, you know, maybe right now it's bad, but 10, 20 years, it's going to be much worse. So seeing it forward, it's like, okay, if we start our efforts now of how to address these problems, then we can prevent it from being more like an epidemic in this case, because not to say like it's going to spread to other people, but as an epidemic, a lot of resources and time needs to go to manage that risk. If we can go work ahead of that, a lot of the money that we would spend would be diverted to other more emergency cases. But this is a problem that I saw really early on. Like, I want to go fix this. So I understood like the molecular signaling of what was going on. Like why do we continue eating even though we know we're full? Like what is the push? Is it really just an individual, or is there some mechanism or system going on? So that was what my research was, understanding the actual mechanism of how when we eat, we slowly train ourselves to continue eating more, even though our body physiologically does not need the extra calories.
Yeah.
Because if we got to understand that, we can understand maybe how to reverse it over time. And that was what the research I published led to. That was my thesis I defended in. So that took 6 years to figure that out, especially with all the mouse work, which is not fun to do. But once you understand that problem, then where I am now, you think, well, what am I, I published a paper, but what do I actually do with it? And I was considering being a doctor, like an endocrinologist, like, okay, that's dealing with diabetics, but it just felt like I was changing medications for them. I want to do something disruptive. I want to change what we would see diabetes as a problem. Like, we want to change so it's not a problem in the future. Not like, oh, we delayed it, you have like 1 more year of life, like good for you. Like, no, we want something that's like, oh, it's gone. Like, you're healthy now. That's what I want to do. I wasn't happy with just going in and treating people. I wanted to create something that was a cure.
And I'm sure you will. You're currently founder in residence at Texas Medical Center. Can you tell us what you do there? What does that entail?
Yeah, so this is a 1-year program. It is there are a few of them around the nation. And what they do is that they contract you for about 1 year. Mm-hmm. They're looking for people who have expertise in multiple fields because they want to train experts who can see problems in different lenses and then create solutions. So I'm contracted for a year to essentially create intellectual property towards something in healthcare. I'm working on a digital application that's going to be used for the how operations are done at a clinic. So not operations like procedures, but the day-to-day tasks that a doctor coordinates with a nurse, with the whole staff. You've all been there. You're in the waiting room. It's long. There's a reason why. It's because we use a lot of paper and a lot of talking, and we don't have much instant communication amongst staff members. This alone is like 34% of our $5 trillion budget is wasted on that type of work. So $5 trillion is a lot of money, right? That could be money spent towards more research efforts and more curative efforts. Yeah. So I see it as like, we offload that burden.
Yeah.
We divert more funds into the healthcare system, which a lot of experts are in, so they can promote more therapeutic approaches. So I feel it's more like I'm giving them more time in their day so that they can actually do the good work that they set out to do.
Well, you're doing great, and that's a good vision. You're helping transform the future of healthcare and medicine. Thank you for taking my questions, Omar. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're going to switch to Gina. Hello, Gina.
Hi, everybody.
Gina, you are in the process of finishing your law degree, and you are preparing yourself for the California bar exam this upcoming July. Law school is a heavy workload, Gina, that requires your utmost dedication. But then you get an impressive degree and you start practicing law. You will have the power to make a difference. How will you immediately use that power, Gina? And where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
If there's something I know for sure, it's what motivated me to go to law school. And I'm certain that I would not have made that choice if it weren't for how much time I spent in Lebanon growing up. That switch constantly between the first world and the third world. I've probably written every admissions essay ever about it. It's just, it forces you to get so comfortable, like not comfortable, but familiar with the extent of your privilege, to really know what it means to have all of the opportunity that you have when you are an American-born citizen, when you are growing up in Los Angeles with, the best educational institutions. And it wasn't just that I needed to find a way that I wanted to find a way to help people, I really did know at a young age that I would not be fulfilled without that aspect. But I didn't play on those strengths for a really long time. For undergrad, I majored in business administration and real estate at USC, and I wasn't the best student. I wasn't inspired by the work I was doing, and I wasn't really playing on my strengths either. I think around 2021, I realized, or 21, I kind of realized, I had these strengths in just reading and writing that I wasn't playing on, and trying to match those strengths with some sort of work that I feel would fulfill me. Once that happened, once I realized that, law school could provide that for me, it was a completely different ballgame. I was suddenly so inspired. I was committed to the work I was doing. And a lot of people do characterize a career in law as a career in conflict or arguing, which is exhausting. But for me, it really has felt like I'm pursuing a career in advocacy and helping people. And so the most important thing for me is to make sure that I stay true to that inspiration. Obviously, going into human rights law is such a broad goal. And for me, finding a way to get there eventually in my career is my long-term goal. But in the 10-year time frame, I could be at the same firm that I'll be starting in, next year and have a large pro bono portfolio. I could be doing something completely different. But I knew that I wanted to get that law degree to give myself that foundation to help people in a way that, involves the law. And helping people is such a broad and general goal. Once I narrowed it down to, this is how I want to do it, this is the route I want to take to play on my strengths, things got a lot more clear for me.
Yes, that's a very impressive vision and very wholesome. You've already made big strides, solid strides toward that goal, Gina. Good for you. Gina, we always hear that democracies and freedoms are most safeguarded by the separation of powers in the government. What can you tell us today to enlighten us about the importance of an independent and separate judiciary system?
The importance of an independent judiciary cannot be understated. It is actually vital to a healthy democracy, because what it does is separate this influence from different branches of government, executive branch, legislative branch, separating it and allowing it to remain textual and consistent, respectable, because when you have an impartial judiciary, that is what puts trust in the people, because people who create the laws or enforce the laws cannot be the same people interpreting the laws. That is way too much power. That is where corruption thrives. And having that separation, of course, even in first world countries, there is corruption. There's always some level of corruption. But for example, in Lebanon, where you have a hierarchical civil judiciary system and one committee of 10 people, the High Judicial Council, that overlooks all of it and is in charge of, this judge, we can transfer him here. Or if I don't like this judicial formation, we can block or delay it. And 8 of those 10 people are directly appointed by the executive branch. The interaction between politics and, that branch of government with the judiciary, it crumbles. There's no independence. There's no dignity. People they don't respect it enough to listen to the laws because they know that it's also intertwined. So to summarize, the importance of having an independent judiciary is that it remains an unpoliticized branch of government. Yes. And when you have a politicized judiciary, there's no independence, there's no respect for that branch, and there's no way to really prosecute the corruption or the crimes or whatever is going on in that country that needs to be addressed.
Yes, that's an outstanding answer, and you speak for me. Gina, how do you think your parents' own experiences give you the strength to be focused and to be where you are today?
I think we could all tell some sort of version of the stories that we did not watch, that our parents have told us about what it was like to immigrate here, how difficult it was, and their backs were against the wall. They built something from nothing. Those stories are incredibly inspiring, and they guided me for the longest time. But when I thought about this question, the elements that I thought most about were the specific experiences that I watched and witnessed from my parents at this stage in my life. I didn't see them immigrate here, and I didn't see, that story, that experience that our parents have shared more or less to some degree. But something that I've gotten from each parent, well, there's definitely one from each. From my dad, the biggest thing I've taken away is his leadership. I feel a very natural gravitational pull towards leadership opportunities, even when I never would have expected that for myself, at a younger age. But now, even in law school, no matter what community I'm a part of, I very much feel this need to be an active participant of every community. And I got that from what I've watched from my dad over the last, 10 years that I've been a very conscious human being and not a little kid. But watching him, it wasn't enough for him to succeed for himself or even his family. And it became, the Lebanese community. And then it wasn't enough just to be a leader in that community. Every community that he is a part of, he is giving something back and he is leading. And that is something that, I hope I've inherited, that I hope to keep acting on and internalizing. And then meanwhile, the biggest thing I've taken away from my mom's experience, I think watching my mom go back to school, and get an MBA after finishing her undergrad degree when we were kids, and become a professor at Chapman University. Watching that experience over the last 5-7 years has been probably one of the most formative experiences of my entire life. It had nothing could inspire me more than that. My mom had no external pressure or reason to get so out of her comfort zone at this middle stage of life, put herself in an entirely new field and see if she can do it. And not, she didn't limit herself to the community that she was familiar with. She's at a fully American institution, a college, and she's, a leader, she's a professor. And it's really the unlimited nature of human potential that I got from that. And also the fact that the world feels so youth-centric sometimes. Like, you have to make it in your 20s. We're so obsessed with what the youth is doing. And I feel like people don't talk about how these experiences later in life, or even the middle of life, they can be so, they can just be so formative and so transformative and take you to a new place. And that was really, really inspiring to watch, and something I hope to keep being inspired by, and growing and changing and putting myself out of my comfort zone throughout all stages of my life, not just while I'm younger.
Yes. Growth has no time limit. And it's your parents' own achievements that led them to set high expectations for you, Gina, and inspired you to aim even higher. When was the last time you visited Lebanon? And is it easy to connect with the culture when you visit?
The last time I was there was 2019. I've been a couple of times by myself, countless times with my family. I think I could do a better job of really assimilating when I'm there. It's so easy to get in my comfort zone and stay with my family, or stay, and let them do this talking when we go out in public, or even when we have, our friends from here who are doing the same thing, going back to Lebanon at the same time as us. It's so easy to stick with them and kind of make that your own experience. I definitely connect with the culture, but I really resonated with what Laura mentioned earlier, where I still don't have a full sense of belonging in either context. Sometimes in Lebanon, I feel whiter than I've ever felt, so American, so not, part of it. But then I come here and it's a completely different story, and I don't feel American or, super connected with American culture either. So hopefully I can, I think it's the language. Hopefully I can get better at Arabic as I, continue to grow older.
Yes, that's a must. And you're developing your own identity, Gina, and that's not going to be solely either this or that. It's going to be solely yours. What do you tell your friends when they ask you about Lebanon? How do you describe Lebanon to them?
It's a different story now. You know, the 2013s through 18 or even 19, it was all about how much fun it was. I mean, the best food, it's the best nightlife, and you can't go there and not have a good time. It was just so much fun. And also to see my cousin and see my, you know, family, it was, I would explain it as I felt it, which was this incredible experience and this privilege. And now, you know, I think about how I always kind of took it for granted that Lebanon would always be there, which doesn't make the most sense because Lebanon was never like the most stable place in the world. But for some reason, I always felt like it would be there and be in the same shape. And so now, you know, I'm reminiscent of those times. But when talking about it, I definitely talk about how inspired I was by just the people. Everyone there wants to be a leader, sometimes to the country's own detriment, but they have such a high spirit. And no matter what happens, I feel like the spirit of the people has never been, you know, it just wasn't undermined. And so hopefully I will continue to embody that spirit and see the country get into better shape at some point soon.
Well, I was born in Lebanon, Gina, and every time I go, I become overwhelmed by the beauty and the unique character of that country. There's so much history, so much beauty in topography, in the food, the weather, the generosity of the people. Thank you so much, Gina, for being with us. Being in a position to help others like you're doing and seek justice for others must be very rewarding. Good luck with your career.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to go to Lucy. Hello, Lucy.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. When was the last time, Lucy, you visited Lebanon? And what do you like the most when you're there?
Yeah, so the last time I was in Lebanon was in 2018. And so unfortunately, I don't have a lot of family here in the US. So seeing family is always what I look forward to the most. I feel like Lebanon kind of has this simplistic feel to it, at least in the summers. I feel like I get to spend a lot of time with them. I usually just like sitting on the balcony with neighbors, eating visit, catching up, you know, finding out what everybody's up to. I also really love visiting my grandma and learning more about Beit Shabib's history. And really, regardless of whatever activity I'm doing, as long as I'm surrounded by family, I'm really happy to be there.
That's nice. Do you consider Lebanon to be also your home, Lucy? Do you call it home?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I always have called it. I always say when I go back home, even though I was born here in the US, I feel like it is a home away from home. And I don't go back as often as I would like. You know, as Gina alluded to, the situation there is progressively getting worse. So we don't spend as much time as we did as when we were kids. Mm-hmm. But it's hard not to consider it home when your family lives there and your childhood was there.
Mm. And your parents come from there and the history and all that. Mm-hmm. Well, Lucy, what is, in your opinion, the greatest advantage today of being born in the US and why?
Yeah, so the word that comes to mind is options. I feel like America is full of options. For instance, there's hundreds of universities to choose from, hundreds of majors and job opportunities. You can find your own identity here, your own niche. And not just that, you also have the opportunity to change that. If, let's say, you major in something and then 30 years from now, that's not what you wanted to do anymore. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's really unique to the United States. You can change and adapt as you get older. And though Lebanon has options too, I'm not saying that, but I just feel as though there's a certain cultural pressure to be a particular job or identity, mm-hmm. especially like a sexual orientation. You don't have those options and freedoms as you do here in the United States. So I also feel like those societal and cultural pressures can sometimes constrain a child's worldview. And unfortunately, as a result, some kids become more limited. Mm. Sorry. So although I love my heritage, I'm very grateful to be in America, which I think is the land of opportunities.
Yes. Thank you, Lucy. You went to UC Berkeley as an undergrad and you studied biology and psychology. I think it is brilliant you integrated the two disciplines together. What prompted you to do that? And where are you going next? What's coming up?
Yeah, of course. So I double majored in integrative biology and psychology. And that I think I did that for three main reasons. So I'll keep it brief. But first, I found the overlap to be really important in understanding a person. Because on one end, you have the biological component, and I feel like that allows you to understand the what of the person, but it limits you in understanding the who of the person. And that's where I feel like psychology comes into play. You really get that deep understanding of people's emotions and experiences by majoring in psychology. And then secondly, I felt like, as though, since I'm a first generation Lebanese American, unfortunately, mental health isn't something really spoken about growing up. And I don't fault that to one individual. I think it's more of a cultural issue. And I think it is slowly changing, but it's a prevalent issue nonetheless. And I felt like sometimes it's taboo or swept under the rug to acknowledge or feel your emotions or understand the emotions of others. So by majoring in psychology, my hope as I get older is I can better understand my own emotional intelligence and understand those of everybody around me, but especially the other first generation Americans, allow them to feel like mental health isn't something to be ashamed of, but rather embraced. And then thirdly, I'll be attending med school in the fall of 2022. So I feel like these two majors really will allow me to best serve my patients. You know, that empathetic component that Omar was talking about is really what I want to be administering as a physician.
That's great. Thank you so much, Lucy. We need every bit of it. Your family celebrates the holidays with other Lebanese families. Now, some of these holidays come from the heart of the American tradition, such as Thanksgiving. We just celebrated 2 days ago. Yet your friends and family always find a way to integrate the two cultures as they celebrate. How do you appreciate such gatherings? And how did they affect you growing up?
Yeah, of course. So what I love about our holidays is that neither of my two identities are lost. I get to celebrate my Lebanese heritage by incorporating, the classic foods with the classic American traditions, especially with Thanksgiving, you get the classic turkey, but you also have tabbouleh and other options there as well. And I think as a child, I didn't know any different. But I won't lie and say that I didn't get confused at times. I felt like at school, when everybody would talk about their holidays, mine sounded very different in comparison to that. But now that I'm older, I appreciate it tenfold. And though my blood relatives aren't here, I feel like I've gained a new family of Lebanese Americans and have met so many other first generations that have allowed me to have a better sense of belonging. And I never really want to lose that blended culture and can definitely see myself doing the same with my own kids. I want them to understand where their grandparents originated from and how I grew up and how their Lebanese heritage blends into every aspect of my life, including holidays.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your feelings with us, Lucy. You're clearly on the right path, and I have no doubt you will achieve all your goals. Good luck with medical school.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ramzi, hi. You're on, you need to unmute, Ramzi. Go ahead.
Sorry, how you doing?
It's okay, it's totally fine. How about you, Ramzi? I know you also have these gatherings. How enriching.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yes, can you tell us?
Yeah, no, I think it's very enriching because just like combining two different completely cultures, so the Lebanese culture and the Lebanese food, then having it at a, Thanksgiving holiday that's very American based. I feel like that in general, not just holidays, but just that kind of combination of two cultures in my life has been very enriching, and it's kind of like given me like a different perspective on the world. And I feel like that gratification is really cool. And I've always tried to like share it with others. So I have a really like good friend from high school, and I remember he came over once for breakfast and we had pancakes on one side of the table, and then on the other side of the table we had minushi za'atar. And this dude, all he ate was the minushi za'atar. He didn't even touch the pancakes. So for me, the combination of like both cultures, whether it's at holidays or whether it's just, at little parts or different times in my life, I think is like really enriching. And it just gives you like a different perspective on the world that is very gratifying.
Yes. Do you feel connected to your grandparents and the rest of the family in Lebanon?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, obviously the distance aspect of it and a little bit of the language barrier is obviously a little bit hard. But my family has really tried to, create a very like family based, value system and everything. So I always, we always used to go back to Lebanon, once every 2 years before COVID hit. And, we always talk to our grandparents, whether it's on Skype or on the phone. So, we've always stayed really connected. So I've been really grateful for that. And yeah, I mean, especially when I was younger, we used to go to Lebanon all the time. And, with the language barrier and everything, there's always like these little specific memories that always stick out to me that I feel like really like personally affected me in a good way with my grandparents. So yeah, I feel like, even with the distance, I feel like we've been very close.
Yeah, it's very special to know that they have reserved a special place in their hearts for you. Your love.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're currently pursuing a master's degree in public policy, Ramzi, specifically environmental policy from George Washington University.
Yes.
Where did your interest in the environment come from?
Oh, yes. So I've always been interested in the environment, in nature, like in high school, always go on hikes and everything. But I don't think it really, came into like play of, I might, study environmental policy, for my master's program while I was in undergrad in college. Through everything that was going on, whether it was COVID or, going to different schools and whatnot, I felt like that constant that I always had was nature, was the environment, whether I'd go with my friends or whether I'd just go by myself. And, there's something about like the natural world, right? So like the positive energy, like the serenity about it, like it kind of gave me really good vibrations. And, I find myself wanting to just, be surrounded by it more and more. And, so obviously I watch a lot of nature and everything. And I love David Attenborough, who's obviously a very famous, environmentalist and everything. And he said something in one of his interviews that I remember that was like, that really stood out to me. He said that, human nature, humans, especially when they're young, when they're babies, right? They're always very enthralled by the natural world, right? So if you're going to be, crawling in the backyard and you find a snail or a slug, humans, like when they're really young, they're intrigued by it. They're going to pick it up. They're going to look at it. They're going to be like, oh, this is so cool, right? So for me, it's like, I don't think I ever lost that interest in the natural world. And I think the reason why I've been so proactive in wanting to be more involved in it, besides just the, the good feelings and energy that I've had with it, is how relevant, climate change and everything is becoming today. So I feel like, mixing my passion that I've started to gain over time with the amount of relevance that issue has made me be like, okay, like this is definitely what, I want to do. And yeah, that's,
That's good. Thank you. Ramzi, global climate negotiations were taking place just recently at the UN's COP26 climate summit. The UN Secretary General said countries are not willing to go far enough in their efforts to slow climate change and asked them all to step up and take action. How frustrated does that leave you? First, as someone, like you just said, who cares about the environment, and second, as someone who represents the young generation that will have to deal with all this mess to clean it up for decades to come.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, obviously. The good thing about it all is that, throughout, like you said, the COP26 UN climate change conference, you see a lot of action through protests from the public, not even people in power. So in that particular stance, that gives me a lot of hope in our generation. But I think studying, so I studied economics for my undergrad degree. So I feel like my perspective on the environment and economics put together, I kind of have a unique perspective on it. So when I see, certain countries, throughout this conference, say we're going to have, net zero carbon emissions by 2050, like the United States and most of Western Europe. And then China will be like, okay, by 2060, right? We have the capabilities, in my opinion, to obviously transition to that sooner, right? But obviously there's going to be a huge economic sacrifice that comes with it. And obviously, money talks, and it's obviously a very important part of the world in general. So if we're not going to transition right away, then it's like, okay, if we're going to wait till then let's make sure that the policies that we're putting into place are actually being followed, right? We're having accountability. And yet, we'll see with, the UN climate change conference, there's certain examples where, the United States loaned out, I think it was 2 million acres to access of oil and natural gas in the Gulf of Mexico for these gas companies like Exxon and Mobil. Right after the conference, you'll have countries in, like the Brazilian government asking for, $1 billion to decrease the amount of rates of deforestation of the Amazon. So I think what, our generation kind of gets frustrated with is, if we're not going to sacrifice economically to transition to a cleaner world and, a renewable world, then we need to see accountability through the policies and the conferences that are being put in place. But obviously, it'll be one thing, it'll be double standard. You'll say one thing and something else will happen. And I think that ego aspect of, oh, we'll worry about it later. Oh, money's, more important. We can figure it out later. From the people in power is what's frustrating. So obviously, someone that really appreciates the natural world that other people obviously have lost kind of affects me, and obviously in a negative way. And obviously, what I'm seeing now with certain policies and conferences is upsetting. But like I said, like in the beginning, this generation is obviously much more aware than
that's
the people in power.
Yeah,
it's very ensuring. And my job obviously as a hopefully environmental policy specialist is to follow up on those policies and make sure that
That's great. Will you be in DC?
We'll see. So from a lot of my classes, I look up, certain policies to evaluate, and every single agency or environmental organization is based in DC. So obviously, I feel like the opportunity there for me to do it, whether I internship there, and then when I'm done with school, try to go to another, state government, local government organization. I mean, who knows? But there's definitely opportunities in DC.
Okay, that's great. We will need the level of ambition you bring to the table, right?
For sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
You give us hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Serene.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Well, you're Ramsey's twin sister.
Yeah.
And you also have an interest in protecting the environment. And that's most likely not a simple coincidence. Does that awareness trace back to your parents' teachings and way of life, Serene?
Yeah, I definitely think it does come from our parents' influence and their sentiments. And I think especially our parents being immigrants, and they came from the other side of the world. And so they have a really deep appreciation for seeing the world in its entirety. And they kind of passed on the idea that, we're not in our own bubble. There's this whole world out there to explore. We are not the world. We're just a part of the world. We're an important part. We're all important parts of the world, but, we're all part of the system. And so I think that they pass down kind of an appreciation for things that are different and things outside of us, and kind of an appreciation of the world just for existing. Like, I do think that with a lot of environmentalist arguments, they kind of focus more on, we need to save the environment so that we can have clean air and clean water, and we need these resources. But there's a little bit less of an argument for, we need to appreciate and protect the environment just because, it exists and it deserves that. And I think that also, that's something that our parents taught us. I think it's also connected to sentiment toward immigrants. And I think that there's also that underlying issue there where I really appreciate when people say, immigrants are so great for the economy. They bring so much to the US. They're doing such amazing things. But I kind of do wish that, there was more of an argument that, we appreciate immigrants just for existing, and their culture is beautiful and the diversity is beautiful. So I do think that's something that our parents did a good job of instilling in us growing up. It was definitely very humbling.
Yes, I'm sure it was. And the hardest, but the most powerful way to teach is to guide by example, because it turns a lesson into a lifestyle. What other habits and values did you pick up from your parents?
Oh, I love this question. I think something that I picked up from my parents, and definitely my favorite part of Lebanese culture, is Lebanese hospitality and generosity. I don't think there's anything like it in the world. Like, I remember my brother and I in Lebanon would be walking down the street, and any person who comes up to you will ask, okay, who are your grandparents? Who's your grandfather? Once you tell them who your grandfather is, they open their arms like this and they bring you in for hugs and kisses, and we're so happy that you're here. And even here, if I go to any Lebanese person's house, any family's house, the second that they open the door, it's the same thing where, like, you open your arms, you say, Ahlan, welcome, we're so happy that you're here, we're so happy to see you. So it's something that I really hope to embody as I get older, the hospitality. Yeah, and it's something that as I got older, I did notice a little bit of the difference. Nothing like bad, but just a difference. Like specifically, I think something that is really sweet is that a lot of Lebanese families, you always pay for other people. No matter what it is, you always have that generosity. And then anywhere you go when the check comes, it's always the family saying, no, let me get this for you. We want this for you. And it gets to the point where it seems like families kind of like, they have different strategies. Like I know our parents would tell us, okay, if you go out to a restaurant, tell everyone you're going to go wash your hands, but go give your card to the waiter. Or, you know, if that doesn't work, we're going to invite them over next week. So just, you know, just trying to like make other people happy and having other people enjoy. I definitely noticed now that I'm living in New York City, sometimes like I'll go out with a big group of friends and the check will come and I'll grab it and I think that there's going to be, you know, kind of a big fight. And instead everyone says like, oh, wow, thank you so much for getting the check. And so I'm so happy to do it. And I know my parents are very happy to have me do it too. But it's definitely a difference that I noticed. But I love how like welcome that my parents make people feel.
Yes, and you will always belong there and you'll always welcome.
Yeah.
As an undergrad, you attended Cornell University and now Columbia, both Ivy League universities. Congratulations, Serene.
Thank you.
What are you currently studying?
So in undergrad, I double majored in environmental science and biology, but in graduate school, I'm majoring in environmental health. So it's an MPH, so Masters of Public Health, but focusing on how the environment affects our health. Like something I'm very interested in is climate change and how with rising temperatures, the mosquito population is expanding to new places and they're spreading lots of disease. So that's what I'm studying now.
That's good. That's good. Yes. Well, your academic journey, Serene, has been on a consistently upward trajectory. You are writing a stellar biography for yourself and for all of us. Where will your career take you next?
So I'm hoping, similarly to my brother, I'm hoping to go into policy. I recently I had to submit, we had to create our own environmental health policy to submit to the policy department at school. So I was talking about how I think with a lot of environmental health issues, there's a lot of individual blame. And my policy that I created talked about how with the meat and grain industry, a lot of people say, oh, you know, people are eating too much meat because they want to eat McDonald's every day. They want, you know, all that fast food. But in reality, I think that, you know, if, you know, you're trying to feed your family and you don't have enough money and you can get a whole meal for $1 versus a box of fruit for, you know, $5 or $10, you know, of course you're going to go, you have to feed your kids. So one of the policies that I was writing was about, you know, kind of focusing more on systemic issues, like taking some pollution taxes maybe to subsidize fruits and vegetables so more people can eat that instead of, you know, fast food and a lot of processed things. Or systemic issues like, you know, the pollution of plastics have a lot of cancer-causing agents. And so people who live near landfills, and they're usually, you know, minority communities, are having high rates of cancer. So I'm hoping to go into policy like that. Yes. I'm hoping with more school, I'll like be able to narrow it down a little more, but that's definitely the field that I'm interested in.
And whichever way you go, I'm sure you're picking the right way for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Serene, you shared your philosophy on life with me by quoting Thich Nhat Hanh when he said, and I quote, "Understanding means throwing away your knowledge." That philosophy is deeply profound. What does it mean to you and how do you live by it?
Thank you. It's actually something that my grandma always told my brother and I growing up. And I think on a surface level, it does kind of mean, you know, ridding your biases and your prejudices when talking about, you know, new experiences, new people, new cultures. But I think on a deeper level, it kind of focuses more on having almost like a childlike view of the world and how, you know, new things and new places are exciting. And kind of what my brother was talking about, that wonder that you have as a child, you know, with the environment, with new people and families, kind of holding that, you know, appreciation and kind of seeing everything as something like to be explored and something beautiful rather than, oh, this is, you know, this is different from me. You know, these people are different from me. So that's something that I definitely try. It's a learning process, but I'm trying to go by that philosophy.
Yes, and that will take you a long way to remain open and willing to change and willing to learn. Serene, it's been a pleasure watching you grow to become the kind-hearted, diligent, and smart young lady you are today. Thank you for taking my questions.
Thank you so much.
Yes, we're gonna switch to Grace. Hi, Grace. Grace, you embraced your difference at a young age and used your culture to your benefit. You assumed leadership positions throughout high school and you're excelling in leadership at USC. How does being different instill that much confidence in you?
Well, I would like to say that we're not going to get anywhere as a nation if we're just relying on specific ideas and specific experiences for prosperity. And progression is not going to be possible unless we allow a variety of ideas and minds and just different experiences. And I embrace my culture because it has provided me with a completely different outlook on life than the peers around me. And it gives me the opportunity to bring these new ideas to the table and get to work with other people and, you know, go back and forth and create new ideas from that. And I think in society, like, differences tend to be shamed and people are categorized based on their gender, sexuality, race, and we need to learn how to not be afraid of change and of these differences, but actually embrace it, because that's what makes our nation beautiful in the first place. And that's what allows us to prosper in the first place. And as a Lebanese woman, I would love to have a voice to represent minorities who have dealt with social discrimination way worse than I could even ever imagine. And I think, therefore, it's crucial to have different ideas, not just for the progression of our nation, but also so that we can properly represent all types of people, especially those who are underrepresented. And I think a quote I really like by Maraboli says, "Hustle until your haters ask if you're hiring." And I really like this because, especially as a woman really interested in leadership, you know, you have to learn how to not let the stigma bring you down and how to keep pushing and know that you're going to get where you want to get just because of your individual person, and that you can end up even more successful than anyone else.
Yes, believe in yourself. Thank you, Grace. You are at USC now, and I know how much you appreciate the opportunity to attend such an outstanding university. You share your gratitude with me every day. You call me, you text me, Mom, I love it here. Grace, what are you majoring in, and where will your career take you in the future?
So after long debate, I finally settled with political science, and I'm focusing on law and human rights. I wanted to join this major because of my passion for social justice and to have a voice to represent those who are underrepresented. And I do plan to go to law school, not necessarily to become a lawyer, but really to get the education in order to implement these policies and to just have an influence over the social structure of our nation. Social prejudice, unfortunately, is still very prevalent today, and I wasn't even aware of this until my ADL convention, my junior year of high school in Washington, D.C., because in my high school, everyone looks the same, everyone acted the same. It was very hard to realize that there is a lot of social differences in the world, and with that comes a lot of social prejudice. And it wasn't until after this that I actually started hearing terrorist jokes about, about me and my one Arab friend at my high school. And this is when I realized, like, this is only bringing us backwards as a nation, and it's really halting our progression. And therefore, I'm really passionate in making a difference in removing the social injustice, removing all the stigmas, and just loving people for who they are and not labeling people. And I think this is something that should have never occurred in the first place, all this social injustice. So,
yes, good one. And you are involved with the student government at USC. How do you find that? How important is that to you?
I think it's really important so that you can have an influence over the decision making of your school, as well as implementing projects to enhance the resources that the school has, but also to bring new resources that the school is lacking. And, you know, USC is a great school, but obviously there's a lot more work that needs to be done. And it's not just USC, it's in every community. And I'm really dedicated to making our environment, not just on my campus, but in society in general, one that aids to benefit all types of people, no matter their race, gender, religion, sexuality, etc. And I think it's important for all different types of people to be in student government so that we can have a diverse panel of ideas and a diverse panel of experiences in order to set a better environment for everyone else on campus and make it a more inclusive environment.
And have a voice and be involved. That's true. Would you entertain running for a political office later on, Grace? Is there a path for you in the US? Should you decide to do so?
Definitely would consider this. When I was younger, I actually really wanted to be president. I still have no doubt that I could still pursue this, but I'm not sure if this is still exactly where I would like to end up. But for some reason, I do have this sort of love for the legislative branch. Don't know what it is, but that's the branch I'm in at my UC government. So sometimes I'm like, yeah, I can be a congresswoman. And sometimes I'm like, oh, but I love the UN. Like, it's great. Like, I would love to work for the UN. So big goals. I'm trying to keep options very open. I'm taking an international relations class and a couple law classes just to see, you know, just to get more education in these subjects, but really see how they work for me and how I can best utilize my strengths. Yeah, and especially like me as a Lebanese woman, not necessarily a clear-cut choice for like an office holder, especially president, you know, as we've seen so far, not just in this government, but in government all around the world. But despite that, I do think there is a path for me because I think it's going to be my mind and my heart and my thoughts and my experiences and all the different backgrounds and everything you and Dad have taught me that are actually going to take me there and my individual person, not because I'm a girl, not because I'm Arab, you know, not because of anything else, just solely based on what I can bring to the table. So, yeah.
Well, Grace, you are unstoppable. And you will realize your dreams, I have no doubt.
Thank you.
And as an immigrant parent, I have experienced the challenge of raising you and your brother in a different culture than my native one, trying to create the right balance of ideas, mixing components from both cultures, those that made sense to me and your dad, in a way to keep you anchored to your heritage, but at the same time, to encourage you to have a voice, to assimilate and excel in the American society. What struck me all along, and I'm sure several other parents share my feeling, is that as I was teaching you, I was also learning from you. Your generation is free-spirited. You are not afraid to speak your mind and stand up for what is right. You all showed us today, all of you, that you value justice, you appreciate freedoms, you respect nature, you want to protect the environment, and you are constantly striving to better yourselves, to seek higher level of education. You know how to listen to others, and you know when to give your opinion. And above all that, you are kind and compassionate. And for all that I mentioned, I admire you, and I put my faith in all of you. Let's give our audience the chance to weigh in and ask you questions. How about that? Let me see what we have. Okay, we have one from Judge Raphael saying, thank you, Lubna, for another great program. These future leaders and world changers make us all very proud. Thank you to today's guests for sharing your experiences, accomplishments, and future goals with us. They are truly awe-inspiring. That's a judge for you, Judge Tony Raphael. Thank you. Anyone else would like here? I have His Excellency Jean Macaron would like to weigh in. Go ahead.
Hello, Lubna.
Hi, hello. Good to see
Thank you, Dr. Lubna, for
Yes,
your.
Ahlan.
It is indeed a fantastic gathering, and
Yes,
thank you very much for organizing this successful meeting with distinguished 7 guests. They are very enthusiastic, very optimistic, very talented, and we benefit a lot from their input about many topics, really. It seems that their generation is very different to their parents, and different in a nice way and in a positive way. Actually, I have 2 questions. All of you, dear guests, you live in America, you study there, and you work. According to you, what is the best way to succeed and to excel and to make a difference in your job and your profession? Second question, as holder of 2 nationalities, how can you combine and commix between them in a way that serves the Lebanese and American community? Thank you.
I was just going to say, really staying true to yourself and educating yourself on both ends, not losing yourself one way or the other, and realizing that it's both a part of you so that you can better understand this culture, integrate it. And I think that's the best way to help either culture, is to really understand the other one too. Because like I was saying, mixing ideas and experiences, like we're only going to grow as a nation. So I think it's really, as we were all talking, I'm sure we all sort of agree that, it's sometimes hard to not lose yourself along the way when it's like maybe conflicting because you feel like you're stuck between 2 worlds. But I think more just embracing that that's who you are, and that just makes it so much more enjoyable and so much easier to understand both ways and learn how to integrate them more to help people on both ends.
Yes. Thank you, Grace. Ramzi, you want to weigh in? Go ahead.
I just wanted to answer his first question. It's kind of, vague and basic, but he asked about how could you, have a job that you would find successful and fulfilling. And I think there's 2 components to that. Obviously, the first one, is you got to be, passionate about your job. And I've realized that obviously when you're really passionate about what you're studying and what you want to work in, then you obviously put more effort into that. And then that effort will, blossom into something that, is beneficial. And I think the second part to it is that I feel like for me, a successful job is something that always is rewarding, but that gives back. Because I feel like, my philosophy is kind of, you want to always leave the place that you found better. So for me, it's like, whatever you're working in, you always want to make sure that, you're creating a better kind of atmosphere and you're leaving it in a better place than you found it. And I feel like a huge part of that is, giving back to it, whether that's through, service or policy making or etc. So I think it's just those 2 aspects, right? I think it's just passion. And then obviously the more passionate you are, I think the more, the better that you're going to leave it compared to when you found it. So, that's my thoughts on that, but yeah.
Thank you, Ramzi. Thank you. I'm going to go to Dr. Nsouli. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Nsouli.
Let me congratulate you for this inspiring episode. It's really heartwarming to see the new generation and their idealism and, in fact, their major accomplishments. And I only feel sorry that they are not in Lebanon to contribute to the reforms and to the new Lebanon. But I'm sure there are still a lot of young Lebanese who are aspiring also to see a new Lebanon. I have a lot of questions, but I will limit myself to only one question, and that is to Gina. Gina brought up a very important issue, which is at the center of what's happening in Lebanon today, and that is the independence of the judiciary. She clearly outlined the need for change in the way the judiciary operates in Lebanon. The question I have for her is, given what has happened in the last few weeks, the way the judiciary has stood very firmly behind Judge Bitar, Does that show that the judiciary in Lebanon today is moving towards much greater independence than used to be the case in the past?
That's a very great question, and I wish I was more informed on this subject, specifically with what has been happening. I think that the problem with the judiciary being able to adjust the formations of judges when a certain decision or opinion is contrary to what, you know, what they think is necessary or best for their country. I think all of that movement and that level of power is problematic. And so any, you know, commitment to standing firmly behind a judge and not reprimanding them for a certain decision or opinion, I think that's, if that's what happened, I think that signals movement. I think that signals progress. But I think that there has to be, you know, I think in terms of Lebanon, there has to be so much institutional change, but institutional change is made up of little changes over time. And, you know, there is no progress too small. So hopefully it is. I would love to answer your question after doing more research and give a more informed answer, but that's hopefully the direction I would like to see Lebanon go towards.
Thank you, Gina. I want to thank you all, Laura, Omar, Gina, Lucy, Ramzi, Serene, and Grace, for giving us the opportunity to know you better. Our eyes will be watching you as you create the change in the world. To everyone else, we are so grateful you joined us today. Please don't forget to connect with us again. Unheard Stories is a monthly event. It falls on the last Saturday of every month. We are, however, skipping the month of December due to the holidays. We will resume our normal schedule on January 29th, and my guest will be Dr. Ardem Patapoutian, our Nobel Prize laureate for the year 2021 in the fields of physiology or medicine. Dr. Pataputyan was born and raised in Lebanon and attended the AUB for a year before immigrating to California. He received his bachelor's degree from UCLA and his PhD in biology from Caltech. We have so much to ask him about his journey to excellence, so don't forget to join us. To watch past events and know about our future ones, you can follow me on social media. Thank you for bringing us into your home and making us part of your Saturday. Goodbye, everyone. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. See you next year. Bye-bye.